The 3 C's of debt. These are the 3 primary variables that we utilize when we're representing companies that are seeking loans, non-bank loans, whatever it may be in the realm of debt. And if you stick around to the end of this video, we'll talk about 2 things that we really focus on in painting the pictures to optimize the probability both that we're going to get the capital we need and on the best terms available. So the first C of debt is collateral. And when we think of that, you say if someone's providing a loan, if someone's providing debt to a business, they want to know what assets are there that in the case that there's a default or that there's not a non-performance on the loan, that I can access to liquidate or monetize in order to try to make myself whole. And so the traditional ways of thinking of that are equipment, machinery, going down the balance sheet, to the more liquid things. You'd say inventory, accounts receivable, and then looking at even intangible things. Is there intellectual property? Is there goodwill in the company? Is there value to the business in itself outside of kind of the specific assets on the balance sheet? And then taking one further step, oftentimes they will look, and this is when you start to get into personal guarantees, are there off-balance sheet assets? Are there other things that we can have access to make ourselves feel more comfortable? And that's always a balancing act, in that you don't want to give too much access to too many things. You do want to kind of clearly cut what is collateral and what's not, but having collateral and being able to characterize and narrate why it's valuable and why it's monetizable in a way will get you better terms on the debt, even though the expectation and the goal, of course, is to never have that be touched. The second is cash flow. So irrespective of the assets in the balance sheet of the business, what is the cash flow being thrown out every day? There are some very asset-light businesses that still throw off lots of cash, and lenders, if they feel like that cash flow is defensible, for instance, if there's contracts supporting it, if there's long-term arrangements, even if there's not contracts, but there's long history with the clients, but if they can get comfortable that there's some durability to the cash flows, that's certainly going to help in, again, getting the debt as well as negotiating the terms. Lastly, we like to say cash out, or that's a third C of debt, and that being if a lender or a capital provider puts $1 in, when does it come back? And so we want to paint that picture for people. Think of it if you were on the side of the table where someone said to you, can I have a loan for my business? You'd say, great, what's the collateral and what kind of cash flow does the business throw off? Good. Next, when do we get our money back? How is this going to work? And if someone just throws a bunch of papers at you and a bunch of random numbers, the onus is then on the lender to say, I've got to paint this picture of when I'm going to put my money in, how it's going to come out, and it can be onerous. But rather, from our perspective, we always want to paint the picture to say dollars come in this day. Here's the map of how the next 18 months work, both from revenue, operating expenses, cost of goods sold. Here's that cash flow after the necessary capital expenditures of the business. Here's the capital that's actually available to repay the debt. And if we can paint that picture for a lender or capital provider, there's that much more confidence. There's that much more of a path of least resistance, if you will, to getting what we're seeking to get. And so those are the 3 C's of debt. I want to say collateral, cash flow, cash out. What do we have access to in terms of assets? What kind of cash does the business throw off? What does the picture look like in terms of us putting money in and getting money out? Now, 2 things that we like to implement in these processes to make sure that we are maximizing our odds of getting the debt as well as getting the best terms for them. One, we like to say multiple escape hatches. And so we don't like flipping coins, because even though if you flip a coin 50 times, it may land on heads or tails, an average of 25 times. You could flip on heads 5 times in a row, or tails vice versa, right? There's the expression that the 6-foot man drowned in the lake that was 5 feet deep on average, right? Because averages aren't always indicative of a situation. And if someone's lending into one particular situation, then all of the idiosyncrasies and nuances of your situation are relevant to their capital preservation. And so when we're painting a picture for somebody who says we're looking for debt, we're looking for capital, we want to say, well, you could get paid out here. If this contract comes through, you could get paid out here just based on the cash flows of the business. You could get paid out here when we're aiming to monetize these particular assets on the balance sheet, or you could get paid here when we go find a new bank. We could get paid here when we're selling the capital. But if you think there's always one instance, right, in most people's mind, and obviously there's many ways it can come about, but if there's one instance in which someone does not get paid back, right, if you can paint 10 pictures in which they will get paid back, it's just implicit in their mind that they're going to say there's a better probability, versus if you said there's one way you get paid back, versus if you say there's one way you get paid back and one way you don't get paid back. So the more escape hatches, right, the more means of getting paid back within the confines of the terms of the deal being thought about, the better. And secondly, we say, don't paint the moonshot picture, right? There's certain conversations you have around equity and there's certain conversations you have around debt. Now, what is the goal of each, right? Now, in debt, you have a limited upside, right? The person's only going to get back their interest in any repayment terms, warrants, or anything that comes with it, but they do have an unlimited downside if the business doesn't perform. So what's their focus? It's much more going to be on capital preservation, on downside protection. Whereas from the perspective of equity, they're buying a piece of the company to get the upside. And so if you're painting a picture for equity, you may say, here's the baseline situation, here's the up situation, here's the really good situation. Whereas with debt, you may say, or may be more prudent to say, here's the baseline situation, here's a pretty good upside situation of what we think is going to happen, but here's a downside scenario, and here's a real ugly scenario. And if you can still paint the picture, which we always try to do, if we can paint the picture of what the real ugly scenario looks like and that we can still make payments, that everything still works the way it is, you're going to instill a lot of confidence, right? Prepare for the worst, hope for the best. If you're in a lender's seat, they want to say what happens when things don't go perfect, what happens when things are ugly. And if we can still feel confident about that and instill that confidence in the capital provider, again, probability of getting the debt goes up, probability of getting good terms on the debt goes up as well. So those are the 3 C's of debt, 2 specific items we like to implement in the process that enhance our probabilities of getting what we want. And that's the thought for today. I hope the week's going well for everyone. Keep pushing forward. God bless. We'll see everyone next time.